In just 3 weeks, over 10,000 American service members are dead. 20 warships, including 2 aircraft carriers, sit at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. 400 aircraft have been destroyed. Taiwan's economy lies in ruins. And China? China has suffered catastrophic losses that could destabilize the Chinese Communist Party itself. This isn't fiction. This is the result of the most comprehensive war games ever conducted on a conflict between the United States and China over Taiwan. A war that military analysts now say could happen within the next 5 years. Today, we're going inside these classified simulations to show you what a US-China war would actually look like. And the answer might terrify you. To understand why this war is even possible, we need to understand Taiwan. This island nation of 23 million people sits just 100 miles off the coast of mainland China. To Beijing, Taiwan isn't a separate country. It's a breakaway province that must be reunified with the mainland, by force if necessary. The United States has maintained what's called strategic ambiguity for decades, refusing to say whether American forces would defend Taiwan if China invaded. But in recent years, that ambiguity has begun to crack. Multiple U.S. presidents have suggested American forces would intervene. Japan has made similar commitments. And China? China has been preparing. The Pentagon projects that by 2027, the People's Liberation Army will have sufficient military capability to attempt a full-scale invasion of Taiwan. Recent war games conducted by the Center for Strategic and International Studies ran this scenario 24 times. The results were sobering. In most cases, the United States, Taiwan, and Japan successfully repelled the Chinese invasion. But the cost was catastrophic on all sides. Here's what makes this conflict different from anything America has fought since World War II. China isn't Iraq or Afghanistan. China is a peer competitor, the world's largest navy by hull count, a rapidly expanding nuclear arsenal, and the industrial capacity to replace losses faster than the United States can. This isn't a war America is guaranteed to win. In fact, according to war games conducted after 2018, the outcome has grown increasingly uncertain. Some simulations show Chinese victory. Others show Pyrrhic American wins where the cost in blood and treasure leaves the U.S. global position shattered for decades. The clock is ticking. Let's examine how this war would actually unfold. Most war games begin with a Chinese declaration. Taiwan has crossed a red line. Maybe Taiwan declared formal independence. Maybe a foreign power intervened in Taiwan's internal affairs in a way Beijing deemed unacceptable. Or maybe Beijing simply decided that peaceful reunification was no longer possible. What happens next unfolds with terrifying speed. Unlike Ukraine, where the world watched Russian forces mass on the border for months, a Chinese invasion of Taiwan would begin with almost no strategic warning. There is no Ukraine-style slow escalation. As one congressman put it after participating in classified war games, our timeline with China won't be what we saw with Russia. We won't have this long, slow build-up to figure out what we want to do and debate what we're going to do. The United States faces an immediate, binary choice. Intervene now or watch Taiwan fall. There is no middle ground. There is no time to build an international coalition. The president has hours, not days, to decide whether to send American forces into combat against a nuclear-armed superpower. If the United States commits to defending Taiwan, American military doctrine calls for immediate, overwhelming force. The Pentagon's plan: launch thousands of precision-guided missiles at Chinese command centers, air defense systems, missile launchers, and naval assets. In the opening hours alone, over 33,000 munitions would target more than 8,500 locations across mainland China. It sounds decisive. Sounds like victory. But here's the problem. It might trigger nuclear war. China operates what military analysts call dual-capable missile systems, launchers that can fire both conventional and nuclear warheads. These systems often sit on the same bases. When American missiles start destroying Chinese launch sites, Beijing faces a terrible choice. Are the Americans targeting our conventional weapons? Or are they preparing to eliminate our nuclear deterrent before striking us with their own nuclear weapons? In the fog of war, with communications degraded and decision-makers operating under extreme time pressure, Chinese leaders might conclude their nuclear arsenal is under threat. The temptation to use it or lose it becomes overwhelming. Recent analysis suggests that in a scenario where China faces rapid conventional defeat, Chinese leadership might authorize a limited nuclear strike, perhaps over open water, as a signal to halt U.S. operations. And then what? Does Washington interpret that as a warning? Or as justification for a preemptive nuclear strike against remaining Chinese capabilities? This is the nightmare scenario that keeps Pentagon planners awake at night. The very warfighting approach designed to achieve rapid victory might instead guarantee nuclear escalation. Meanwhile, the physical battle rages. Chinese forces launch their own massive strike against U.S. bases in Japan, Guam, and across the Western Pacific. The goal? Blind and degrade American power projection capabilities before U.S. forces can fully mobilize. Within the first 48 hours, U.S. airbases in Japan and Okinawa are hit by waves of ballistic and cruise missiles. Runways are cratered. Aircraft are destroyed on the ground. The massive logistics hubs that allow the U.S. to project power across the Pacific are under sustained attack. At sea, the battle is even more intense. China's anti-ship ballistic missiles, dubbed carrier killers, arc through the upper atmosphere at hypersonic speeds, targeting American aircraft carriers operating east of Taiwan. U.S. carrier strike groups, the centerpiece of American naval power for 70 years, suddenly find themselves hunted. In most size wargame iterations, both forward-deployed American carriers are hit within the first few turns, sunk or catastrophically damaged. The vulnerability of surface ships to modern anti-ship missiles becomes brutally apparent. While missiles fly and ships burn, China's real objective begins: the amphibious invasion of Taiwan itself. This would be the largest amphibious operation since D-Day, except infinitely more complex and conducted against a well-armed, modern military backed by the most powerful navy on Earth. The odds of success are slim. The cost would be staggering. And yet, recent intelligence suggests China is preparing to do exactly this. Here's how it would work. China's dedicated amphibious fleet, Type 071 and Type 075 landing ships, can transport approximately 20,000 troops in the first wave. That's nowhere near enough. Military experts estimate China would need to land between 300,000 and 1 million troops to successfully occupy Taiwan. So how does China solve this problem? With a shadow navy. Recent investigations have revealed that China has been rehearsing amphibious landings using civilian cargo ships and roll-on, roll-off ferries, vessels normally used for commercial shipping but modified to land military vehicles directly onto beaches. In August 2025, satellite imagery captured at least 330 vehicles massed on beaches during Chinese exercises. 12 civilian vessels were tracked participating in military drills, grounding themselves on sand and unloading armor and troops. China has also developed something unprecedented: the Shuiqiao-class landing barges. These are massive, self-propelled platforms with telescoping bridges that extend from ship to shore, creating instant logistics pipelines that bypass destroyed ports entirely. There is no comparable system anywhere in the world. China built them for one purpose: to invade Taiwan. But even with this expanded capability, the challenges are immense. Taiwan's coastline offers few suitable landing beaches. The island's geography, steep cliffs, urban centers near the coast, dense defenses, makes every landing site a potential killing field. Taiwan's military, supported by U.S. and Japanese forces, unleashes everything they have. Shore-based anti-ship missiles, mines scattered across approach routes, attack helicopters, and drones swarm the invasion fleet. Small, portable weapons, shoulder-fired missiles operated by individual soldiers, turn out to be devastatingly effective against thin-skinned landing craft. The waters off Taiwan become a graveyard. The size war games consistently show China losing over 130 ships in successful invasion scenarios. In failed invasions, Chinese naval losses are even higher. But here's the critical finding: if Taiwan's ground forces can hold, if they can prevent Chinese troops from establishing secure beachheads, then the invasion fails. The war games consistently showed that Taiwan's ability to deny China a lodgment on the beach was the single most important factor determining the outcome. This places enormous pressure on Taiwan's military, a force of roughly 88,000 immediately deployable troops facing a potential invasion force 10 times that size. If Chinese forces break through and establish a secure foothold, if they can land hundreds of thousands of troops and link up their forces to cut off Taipei from the south, Taiwan's ability to resist collapses rapidly. While the surface battle rages, two other wars are being fought, one in the skies above the Pacific, and one in the dark depths below. The air war over Taiwan would be the most intense aerial combat since World War II. China begins with a massive advantage: geography. Chinese fighters can operate from hundreds of airbases on the mainland, just minutes from Taiwan. U.S. aircraft must fly from carriers potentially hundreds of miles away, or from bases in Japan that are themselves under attack. In early wargame iterations, China's air force overwhelmed Taiwan's defenders through sheer numbers. But recent simulations show a different picture. The introduction of advanced U.S. fifth-generation fighters, F-35s and F-22s, along with long-range stealth bombers armed with standoff weapons, dramatically improved U.S. performance. Still, the losses are catastrophic. The CSIS analysis projects 200 to 400 U.S. aircraft destroyed in the first 3 weeks of fighting. That's more combat losses than the United States has suffered in the past 30 years combined, condensed into less than a month. Chinese losses are equally severe, but China has more aircraft to lose, and they can replace them faster. China's industrial capacity allows it to produce ships and aircraft at rates the United States simply cannot match. One RAND researcher described the problem starkly. The U.S. lost assets in theater very quickly and cannot project power into the battlespace to defeat an invasion. Beneath the waves, a different kind of battle unfolds. Chinese submarines, particularly the modern diesel-electric boats armed with cruise missiles, pose what military analysts call a credible and challenging threat to U.S. surface vessels. These submarines are quiet, difficult to detect, and deadly. But here, the United States maintains a clear advantage. American nuclear attack submarines are faster, quieter, and crewed by personnel with decades of operational experience that China's Navy simply doesn't have. In the war games, U.S. submarines consistently proved devastatingly effective, sinking Chinese ships while remaining nearly undetectable themselves. One CSIS wargame analyst noted that introducing more U.S. submarines and long-range anti-ship missiles into the scenario significantly improved the U.S. Japan-Taiwan alliance's chances of victory. Submarines, operating independently and able to strike from unexpected angles, became the ace in the hole for American strategy.